So making sense of 2026 so far, and heavens, it's been difficult to keep up with all the headlines. We're going to talk Trump, what has he done economically? And I think we have to talk about oil in there somewhere as well, because that is without a doubt between Venezuela and Iran.
Yes.
A lot of people talking about the impact of oil. Wonder what's going to happen with the oil price. It's been great. We've enjoyed, Francis Herd, here in South Africa, the lower fuel prices. I wonder if that's going to continue, though. We'll get there. But Trump and his tariffs and the economy globally and for South Africa, where are we early 2026?
So Trump basically asked, what can you do for your country to Americans and the rest of the world, right? It's all about what can you do for America. So I love that we're looking at what Trump's policies can do for our economy. And surprisingly, it has been pretty good for us. Some of the ructions. One of the reasons is because of the gold price. So what has Trump given us this week? A new record high in the gold price. Predictions are that gold could reach $5,000 per ounce. That is the prediction by the end of the year, which would be an incredible high. And platinum and silver and all the precious metals have been going up. Platinum has other drivers as well, but all good for our resources sectors that basically buoyed the JSE last year. So Trump has given us that again, but the oil is different because a lot of the uncertainty that's driving up gold has been around Iran's oil supply and what happens if the US invades Iran. So oil was down, and we saw the 4-year low in our fuel prices because of the rand and the oil prices this month. But our fuel prices are determined partly by the global oil price, which was going up. It went from below 60 to above $66. It was jumping up on concerns that Trump would go into Iran. It has pulled back. That is the good news, because Trump has pulled back on his rhetoric, and it looks like now maybe there's not going to be an imminent military strike. Who knows? It seems to change overnight. But for now, the gold price is actually down and oil has pulled back down. And I can tell you what you can expect for fuel, by the way, for February.
Do you have your crystal ball with us? Because you talked about the oil, and I was like, how far in advance can we look here, though? I was wondering. Now you obviously can tell us at some level.
So I can, because the Central Energy Fund released an outlook today. Does that in the middle of the month. So things could change, especially with Trump at the helm of the US. Things can change very quickly.
You're lining this up like it's good news, Francis.
Things can change, but right now we already have a 4-year low. And the Energy Fund saying we could see an 80 to 85 cent drop in petrol in February. Yeah, and that is a significant drop. And you drive a diesel car,
I do
right?
drive. Unfortunately for me, I do, yes.
So you're looking at a drop of more than a rand. So
I had a rand drop roughly in Jan, and maybe another rand come February.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
And this is huge for the South African economy because so much cargo is transported on roads. Unfortunately, often the taxi prices go up when the fuel price goes up, and we know they often don't come down.
Yes.
If only they dropped prices for everyday commuters. But generally, this is good news. So oil was going up, but now it's down because he's not going to evade Iran today.
Not today anyway. We'll see what Trump does next week. Because on the diesel price, that's important, not just for those of us who are driving diesel, but as you mentioned, road freight, very important because they're using ordinarily diesel, so it's good for them. But the end user consumer should, in theory, see a reduction in groceries, in household products, because the diesel price and the transport costs are coming down.
Exactly. And this was a concern a year ago. We would have probably mentioned the cost of living crisis in every podcast we make. But incredibly, prices have come down, and this just adds to that momentum, bringing inflation down, which is good. When prices are stable and they're not jumping up, remember your salary doesn't jump up every month. So it becomes very affordable when inflation is pushing higher. This is very good for inflation. What else Trump did this week links to what you were saying, the NVIDIA AI chips, which is very interesting.
It is interesting because you have to wonder, especially with like AI coming in, NVIDIA, for those who are into gaming and computers, is those chips, those high-end processing chips that go into computers and laptops and all that kind of thing. But it's always been interesting for me because China produces them. I think they physically produce the chips as well. But now the US is involved to some degree. And I can't help understand where the two are coming in together.
So NVIDIA is an American company that produces very advanced chips.
Yes.
And maybe this is where the US should be even more concerned than it is. Because the talk for a while was that NVIDIA shouldn't even export chips to China. The reason being because these chips are used to develop AI, right? And if you talk about security threats, I wonder if people will look back now on what happened in the world now and in the future, because wars won't be waged by Army SEALs, but maybe by AI robots.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was about to say, what could this mean in, say, a year or 2 or 3? But you best believe if China has the development in technology that they have, they can't be that far behind America. Why would Trump be doing it now, knowing that China would be catching up very, very quickly? And then you also have to give thought to beyond the physical chips, because you're talking physical chips right now, the NVIDIA chips. I would suggest that maybe in 5, 10, maybe less than that, the world is going to be on the cloud. It's going to be streamed. I'm not sure where the chips would actually fit in there. So I wonder what the future proofing is on the chips as well. Maybe one of our expert pop-up guests can add to that. So, but that one isn't, I think, right now as big for me. And I'm going to circle us back to the oil issue while we continue to buy NVIDIA chips for our computer games, is that of oil. Not so much the oil. You spoke about the oil price and the fuel price, which is great for us. But the one country you mentioned, Francis, was Iran. Iran is so incredibly important. And obviously, we've seen what's been happening with Venezuela and arguably their oil as well. But the fact that South Africa is even still in good talking terms with Iran doesn't put us in the good books of one Donald Trump. And I'm wondering what that means for us and our economy going forward. He really doesn't like us, and now he wants to put sanctions on Iran. I'm wondering where we come in.
So he has threatened 25% tariffs. He said it a while back, immediately on anybody who does business with Iran. And look, there's a lot of political concern about Iran. I'd love to talk about the fact that the protest action is linked to the economy of Iran as well. But firstly, our trade and our research department at ENCA gave me this, and it is fascinating just how ridiculously small our trade with Iran is. So we could face, if Trump goes through with this, another 25% tariff. Because we are doing business with Iran.
But apparently very small.
But very small. If I can find the figures, you'll be amazed at how small it is. So Iran sells $3.7 million worth of goods to South Africa annually. That's 60 million rand or so, which is a drop in the bucket. Now, if you look at their exports, as a percentage of Iran's exports to South Africa, the few little things that come our way, 0.003% of Iran's total exports.
It's only 1%.
No, it's ridiculously small.
And we could get hammered with massive tariffs for being associated.
Yeah, and then we sell them, about 5 times more, but it's still ridiculously small. $20 million or so worth of goods. That's 330 million rand. I mean, some companies make 330 million rand in South Africa in less than a day. This is so tiny, and it's far below 0.1% of our GDP and 0.1% of our exports. So our relationship with Iran is not about trade. And let's make that very clear. Both sides are talking about increasing trade, and we used to buy a lot of oil from Iran. We used to buy, I think it was 35% of our oil came from Iran. So that was a different time. That stopped in 2012. Basically stopped because the US and EU put those sanctions on Iran, and we're seeing the pain of those sanctions in the protest action as well. Maybe justifiably, they said stop doing trade with Iran, and South Africa complied. So we still have this little trade relationship, but it's puny.
Yeah.
It's
Comparatively,
puny.
when you break down the numbers, it's, as you say, it's less than 1%. We're talking 0.02%, etc. A last one. I'm curious. The protests we're seeing now, because we're talking money in the markets and the economy, of course. The protests in Iran years ago were due to political turmoil. They were protesting ideologies and governance. I get a sense, and I don't know if you can add some gravy to the mash for me here if you want to, but I get a sense this is more about the economy for those protests in Iran.
Seemingly, it began because of economic issues. And The Economist has been doing a lot of commentary on this. And it's fascinating because the last big protest action was in 2022. And yes, it was how authorities were treating women in burqas, whether they should be forced to wear the veil. That was seemingly more political. And out of that, among the politicians who don't always have much sway because you basically have a religious regime in charge, right? The Ayatollah at the head. But there were reformers saying we need to change a little bit with the times. Now Iran is in a situation where the economy is front and center. The currency before these demonstrations broke out was plunging. So people trying to import not NVIDIA chips, anything, a computer.
Cell phones, whatever.
So the tech traders were feeling it. And ordinary Iranians were feeling it. So who's to blame? The Iranian regime would say, the people who put sanctions on us, but there's definitely been mismanagement and the politicians aren't sure what to do this time. Interestingly enough, the president, at the time, he was saying, look, let's be conciliatory. There are economic concerns. He's hardened his stance, and now the rhetoric in Iran is all that there are foreign instigators as well, and this should be crushed. But he said, okay, let's offer a cash stipend of $7 a month. A month, because people are feeling the pain. So the Wall Street Journal said this would cover the cost of 2 coffees and a slice of cake in Tehran.
Which is not what the people of Tehran are looking for. What do you do with $7 a month? And that's where we're going to leave it for the week. So it's $7 a month. We've been talking about the oil issue, what's been happening with NVIDIA chips, of course, and how, once again, in a new year, but you wouldn't think so with Donald Trump, and whatever he says makes the headlines, and whatever he says seems to affect the economy as well. So that's it for this week's edition of Trying Our Very Best. At least me, Francis is doing a great job. I'm not so much.
Thanks, I'm trying to.
Making sense of it all. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.